Well, thanks for bringing that in.
You're welcome.
I've not come across that before, so that's Mike Patton.
He's kind of kooky. He's kind of out there.
Now, our guest is Mark Fleischhaker.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks
It's
for
always
having me.
nice to have someone to bat something back and forth with. Playing tracks
Sure.
has got its charm. But now you are here also to talk about some music that you've brought in and some music that you've made.
Mm-hmm. My solo project is called Terrible Crayon. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's called that after we hear a couple pieces. The first one is called I'm Telling on You, and the second one is called Paola's Talk. And yeah, let's just take a listen to it.
Okay, I'm telling. Okay, good. I'm telling on you because. Okay, I'm telling. Okay, good. I'm telling on you because you put. I'm telling on you.
listening to my favorite song. The pale said, "Go suck my tit, 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 got it, got it, got it, got it." So, sitting bitter, skate, on the world, pure. My favorite song was on. And he said, "Go suck my tit." And then I couldn't see it. Nope. So, sitting in bed listening to the skis song of the whole world, the pianos. It was late at night. I was sitting in my bed at home, listening to my favorite songs. The payolas. And he said, "Go suck my tit, tit, I've gotten, So, sitting in bed listening to the skis on the world, payolas. It was late at night. I was sitting the payolas. I was sitting in my bed at home, listening to my favorite song. Song. Sitting in my bed at home, listening to my favorite song.
Okay, it's the noise on CJSW, and our guest Mark is here to talk about Terrible Crayon, which you just heard.
Yes, I hope you all enjoyed it out there in Radioland.
How are you enjoying your Radioland experience? You haven't been up here yet.
No, it's really nice. It's really cool in here, too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very comfortable right now.
Very nice. Well, I enjoyed that piece, and I hope
Thanks,
our listeners did. And can you talk a little bit about how you did this and why you did this?
Sure. Well, I've been doing stuff like this for as long as I can remember, back when I was a little kid and messing around with a tape recorder. And then as I get older, the ideas just kind of blossom and become more valid, I suppose, and you just find more tools to play with. Yeah, back then it was really naive and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that it felt good to do. But now, you know, I'm going to be 40 right away, and I'm meeting people over the past 10 years that you know, are like-minded and are into the same thing. And I had a lot of practice in my 20s doing this stuff by myself with distortion pedals and delay pedals into a microphone. Actually, Mike Patton, the singer from the Adult Themes for Voice, what you just heard previously, is a monumental influence on me as far as wanting to pick up a microphone and experiment with the human voice, basically. I know he's not musically trained, and he didn't go to a vocal teacher. He doesn't have a music degree. I don't have a music degree either. He's self-taught. I'm self-taught. It's basically, you know, I can't speak for him, but we have that similarity. And I think you just get to know your voice better through trying things out. You know, just, I know putting a microphone through pedals and going through an amplifier, you discover that you can get away with some really cool things that you couldn't just do if you weren't plugged into anything. Like, the voice will carry itself and it will surprise you. And then you're like, oh, I can do that now. So there's a lot of that going on.
Can I ask you, when you were first experimenting with tape player and the, you know, the sort of prehistoric compared to now with you know, digital nonlinear editing and stuff like that, how did you originally come across the ways that you would manipulate your voice and sound to sound good with your kind of, you know, not the equipment that you use now?
Right. Well, you know, it hasn't really changed that much, to be honest. I mean, my primary setup now is kind of what I used back then, which is basically delay and distortion, like guitar pedals that I plug through a microphone. The only difference now would be that the delay pedals are a little bit more sophisticated, and I include an electronic chaos pad into my setup as well, which I don't even think it existed back then. Maybe it did, I don't know. I didn't know, I wasn't too into like specific electronics, more into just what was laying around in our rehearsal spaces, whatever I had access to, right? There was a piece of shit tape recorder. Oh, can I swear online?
Oh, sure, yeah,
online. I'm sorry. There was a tape recorder that was, you know, not very functional, but I made it work for me. The piece that you're going to play of mine next actually was used with that recorder. The pause button is something that became my best friend when I discovered that you could record yourself and then just go nuts with the pause button in different rhythms, chopping up your voice. I used to do that as a little kid with radio DJs, but it never ever occurred to me to do it with my own voice until that one night in 1996 where I was bored and I was like in our rehearsal space and, I was like, I'm not doing anything productive here. I might as well go home. And then I remembered that I used to do that as a kid and I started doing it. And then I started doing it with my own voice. And then I spent like another 2 hours there just doing what I think is still to this day probably one of the best things I've ever done.
That's fantastic. Something just clicked.
Yeah,
And
just a little light bulb went off, and next thing you know, you're off and running.
necessity being the mother of invention comes to mind.
Yeah. But actually, I should backtrack a little bit about the Terrible Crayon thing.
Yeah.
I was doing experiments like that for a long time, but just didn't really have a name for it. And what happened was some friends of mine were writing some song titles down, and I'd accidentally said Terrible Crayon in a sentence to my friend, and I didn't even realize that I said it, but he wrote it down and handed it to me on a piece of paper. I'm like, what's this? It's like, you just said Terrible Crayon like 2 seconds ago. And he drew like an angry crayon breathing fire, and I was like, wow, okay, this sounds like a band to me. This doesn't sound like a song title. It's too good. I'm gonna let this percolate and see. And I figured, well, I might as well just claim it for myself. I'm the one that thought of it. So yeah. And then the little kids. I have a tape of my cousins in the '80s swearing into my tape recorder, and that sat in a drawer forever, and I didn't do much with it. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, this Terrible Crayon thing, little kids swearing. There's another connection there. So. Yeah, I did a whole recording of just based on samples of my little cousins from the '80s swearing into this tape.
Now, 2 questions I'd like to ask you. Hey, Bruce, if you're waiting out there, come on in. It's just a door away. Okay, all right. Well, now about your Terrible Crayon that we just listened to, that piece with the kids, and you were talking a little bit about the microphone techniques that you would use. And I don't want to get too technical, but I am interested in kind of how these sounds are made that the listeners just heard. Could you go over just a bit about that?
With the microphones specifically?
Or just like your setup with the tape, what you do?
Oh, okay. Well, the tape is just that. Like I run it through, my samples are on cassettes and I run them through a tape recorder. And I just take the microphone that's going through the amp and just mic the speaker of the tape recorder. And then I put it through a giga delay and loop it. And then once it's looped, I make sounds over top of that. And my primary setup right now is just a DD3 digital delay from Boss, Giga Delay, which is one of the newer delay pedals that came out, which I primarily use for looping samples, but it can do a lot more than that. And then a Boss Mega Distortion pedal, run-of-the-mill guitar distortion pedal, and a mini Chaos pad. That's pretty much it.
Very cool.
Just those 4.
This is a very democratic way to make music, isn't it?
I suppose so. Yeah. And actually, I bought a microcube. I really like the microcube. The reason I bought it is because I have a bad back, and I started really, really hating relying on other people for gear. So a little microcube. It's really, really small, really lightweight, but it surprisingly goes really, really loud, especially when you're just yourself, right? It's perfect for the solo act because I'm not competing with any other sounds. It's all coming through the little microcube. And it's got a lot of awesome channels on it and effects built into it. And I find that when I'm doing this stuff, I'm flipping through the channels on the microcube and using the effects on the amp almost just as much as my other pedals. So now it's kind of become almost an essential part of what I'm doing now.
Now maybe I'll lay off the tech questions for now, and maybe one more. But
sure,
after that, I want to ask about some of your musical delights and interests and stuff.
Okay.
And Mark brought a bunch of music for us tonight, folks. And maybe could you just describe the piece that we're going to finish off Terrible Crayon with? And
Sure. Technically, this isn't Terrible Crayon, as I did it in the late 90s. But it's the piece I was mentioning previous, where I was in my rehearsal space and found this tape recorder and created this really strange piece. I ended up calling it Playing With Myself, because that's what I was doing. I was alone and entertaining myself, and I was playing. Mike Patton's Adult Themes for Voice had just come out previously that year, I believe March or April of '96. and I did this in September of '96. And that album, like I said, it opened up doors for me hugely. I don't even think I would have done this recording if it wasn't for that Adam Themes for Voice album.
What kind of music were you playing before that?
I was in a pop band called Mrs. Svensson from Regina, Saskatchewan. This is all from Regina, by the way.
Oh,
yeah. Like I spent my '90s in Regina. I moved here in 2002. Yeah. So yeah, I was always doing this stuff off to the side with friends. It was never, there especially back then, there was no venues to go and do this sort of thing. I think we played. Some friends of mine played a private party, a birthday party. But other than that, yeah, that's.
Do you think they knew what they were in for at the party?
Most of them, no.
That's got to be a fun show to play.
No, yeah, there was a revolving door around people coming in and out of the space we were playing the whole time. But wait, whatever.
All right, let's listen to this piece. What did you say it was called? Sorry.
Playing with Myself.
Okay, cool.
Pee 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 pee. Baba. Bolo. Go 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 go.
Sorry.
My.
Without the aid of God, if they are to be redeemed, He will have to do it. In other words, you better tell them goodbye, because you're not going to see them anymore.
Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye. Bye.
The Lord is His name. My, they're singing lustily now. And they were moaning and crying out.
We just can't quite figure out what's going on, and we find ourselves in the situation and circumstances that we can't change. Now, let me clarify something. When I talk about walking through darkness, upon that we can build great hope. Upon that we can build great faith. But you have to have that as a foundation. And
Mojo. Did it mean to? You didn't mean to. Dare me? No. I didn't. You. Mitt. Speak. Talk. Suck. Quiet. Huh? Shut up. Take it easy. Kiss. A kiss. Reality.
Well, first of all, and foremost, above every other thing, you may find it helpful to review this material again, or you may wish to pass these studies along to a friend. We'd like to facilitate that by providing you with a free cassette copy.
Gnarly.
That was Mark Fleischhaker, and he's
sure
on Noise.
was.
So you were telling me about how you were making these noises, while we were listening to it, and it sounds pretty cool the way that you can use the pause button to make all those very fast clicking. And I don't know, just for a piece of DJ's perspective, it kind of does sound like you're flipping through a deck of audio cards or something.
Yeah. That one tape recorder that nobody was paying attention to in the corner of our jam space, it served a purpose. Yeah, I mean, I've tried out other tape recorders since, and they don't have that sort of when you pause something, it leaves a little mark on the tape when you play it back. This one was very clean, and it sounded. If it wasn't so clean, I probably wouldn't have done the recording actually. And all the other ones that I've looked at since don't sound like that. And stupidly, I didn't take something happened to the tape recorder. Maybe it broke, or a lot of things got broken back then. But at least I made this one, so I got it out of my system. So I haven't done anything quite like that since, because I haven't found the right tool. But I think that one was plenty. That was enough. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you a couple questions, but first, get it out there for the listeners. If they've been enjoying what you've been playing, someone can go and see you perform live this Saturday. Right.
Yes, I have Terrible Crayon has a show at Dickens Pub this Saturday, the 30th. A friend of mine is taking a chance on me and let me open up for some rock bands. I'm opening up for a band called Sharks Aren't Scavengers. According to their MySpace page, they sound like the awkward transition from youth into adulthood.
Okay, and
So-
how would you describe yourself on your MySpace if you had one?
I blur the lines between comedy and horror.
Very cool. I enjoy that.
I had a friend of mine tell me I do the scary funny thing very well. So I was like, yeah, comedy and horror sounds a little bit more sophisticated. I think I'll use that.
Excellent. Can I ask you a quick question? Have you
Sure.
heard of Blue Jam at all?
No.
Okay, we're going to play a little bit of that later, but horror and funny is hopefully going to be a theme for the 11 to midnight slot. Maybe we can get some material from you for a little bit later, but
Okay.
we're going to kind of trade some tracks back and forth, you and I, for the rest of the show, or for a little while
Sounds
anyway.
good.
And I don't know, I guess besides talking about like the music that we're going to play or whatever, I'd kind of like to know where your tastes come into in creating your own music. I don't know, you came from a pop band. I'm kind of curious as to, where your more out there tastes came from and how you came to, embrace them.
Well, I've always been into weird, strange, peculiar stuff. But I think the composer John Zorin, around 93, 94, a good friend of mine, Leon Herpinger, who's a brilliant guitar player, made me every single Zorin recording he had. He's like, Mark, you need to hear this guy. And that coinciding with the first couple of Mr. Bungle releases around like from 91 to 94, 95 really kind of changed the way I heard music. Definitely. So I would say John Zorin, because he's a composer that doesn't do just one thing. He does a lot of abrasive, noisy things, but he does all kinds of music. And Mike Patton in general, just his projects. Those are my two biggest musical influences. Now, I'm also a huge David Lynch fan. David Lynch is probably my all-time favorite ever. So his art has also leaked into the way I approach music. Even though, I'm talking about films here, but I just love the way that guy operates. I think he's just the best.
And can you think of maybe a moment that David Lynch, maybe just to share with the audience, that was definitely a frightening or disconcerting moment, but actually made funny, as he does so many times?
Yeah, I guess first time I saw Blue Velvet, the whole Frank Booth thing, you don't know whether this is supposed to be funny or not. Yeah, a lot of moments in Twin Peaks are like that. He's another guy that's really good at blurring the line between, is this funny? Should I be laughing? This is kind of creepy. I don't know if I should be creeped out by this. Or he just really makes you think about what you're seeing.
I think you're doing something similar in the way that you're splicing in very serious preachers. What they're talking about isn't a laughing matter.
Right. Well, yeah. While I was making that recording, I was flipping through the radio for whatever happened to be on, and the whole preacher thing I thought was interesting, so I threw that on there. And then there was a commercial about share this tape with your friends, and it was just, they were just gifts, man. They were just total gifts.
Well, I've enjoyed listening to your projects, and
Thanks, dude.
that sort of listening, I think, slides very nicely into an evening radio show. So I'm glad that you had the idea to bring this stuff for us. Now, I'm Nathan. This has been Noise. My guest tonight has been Mark Fleischhaker, and you are playing a show this Saturday.
I am, yes, Dickens Pub, Saturday the 30th. Yeah, I'm opening for a band called Sharks Aren't Scavengers, and it'll be my first improv show outside of the normal improv collectives that I'm used to playing. So I really don't know what to expect. A few of my friends are going to be there. I'm pretty, it's safe to go into these things expecting the worst, so that when people actually like what you do, it's like icing on the cake. Whereas if I go in there thinking, oh, everybody's going to love this, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. So I think that's, especially given with what I'm doing sonically, I think it's the best way to approach it, especially at a show like this where it's just, I'm sure the bartenders are going to be like, what the hell is that guy doing?
But that'll be fun for you.
Oh,
anyway.
absolutely. I know. I enjoy that. I do.
Now, if people are interested in your music and other things that you might be into and up to in the future, you have a website you can give out.
I do. I'm on Bandcamp now, Terrible Crayon, and I believe that is terriblecrayon.bandcamp.com. And I also have a YouTube channel that has all my Terrible Crayon stuff, plus all my other bands that I've ever been in. That is youtube.com/user/MARKFLY, Mark Fly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on and picking out some good musics for us.
Sure,
and
it was fun. Thanks.
Is there anything else? Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Very welcome. And also, do come back on when you're coming closer to the art show that you mentioned in September.
Oh, yeah, I'm playing another show, Discord 30 at the Media Art Gallery. I believe it's Saturday, the 17th, the 19th of September, something like that. Yeah.
And definitely stay tuned to CJSW for more info on that. I'm sure Paula's all over it. And what is this all about?
This is another John Zorn album. As you can tell, I really like John Zorn.